I have these. So recently I came across a couple listings on eBay for some broken controllers. In this case, there were two listings, one for NES controllers and another listing for 6 Sega Genesis controllers, which as you can see, they really don't even fit on my table right now. Both listings had the controllers for sale as broken and not working. It looks like they might have tested them out, realized maybe the buttons didn't work, and just put them for sale on eBay as a lot for somebody else to pick up and try to fix. Both sellers looked like they might have been companies that just got these as trade-ins. I don't think they were game reseller companies, so they probably didn't want to put a lot of effort into actually trying to repair and fix these controllers. They just figured they would bundle them up, list them on eBay, and try to get a little bit of money back for them. And that got me to thinking, for every broken controller that ends up on eBay, how many similarly broken controllers end up in the trash instead? And I can relate to that topic very well. When I was a kid, I had a Super Nintendo, and I had a couple friends over, and we were playing, I believe it was Clay Fighter, and my friends got a little bit too heated in the match. They kind of got a little bit upset with each other, grabbed one of the controllers. Somebody had the controller, somebody had the cord, they pulled the cord partway out of the controller stopped working. So as a kid, I didn't know how to fix it, and neither did my dad, so we just threw it away and went and bought another one instead. Now looking back, I wished I had tried to fix it. My guess is it probably would have been a pretty easy fix to do, and that would have saved a Super Nintendo controller from the landfill. So when I saw these two listings, I had to buy them. And I was curious how easy these controllers would be to fix. I've already taken multiple ones apart before, cleaned them, that kind of thing. Super easy fix. So I'm curious how many of these are going to be a similarly easy fix, and how many of these end up in a landfill that somebody could have simply fixed by taking it apart and cleaning them instead. So I think for now, just because there are so many controllers and this is such a big mess on the table, I'm going to start with just the SNES controllers. There we go, that's a little bit better. So we're going to start with the NES controllers. If we have time, I'd like to do the Genesis controllers as well, but if not, I'll push that off to a part 2, and we'll just focus on these for this video. So I'm going to guess for every one of these controllers, it's likely going to be dirty contacts on the PCB itself. These old NES controllers have, I believe they're carbon tracks instead of just regular copper traces, and those seem like they can get a little bit dirtier faster, plus constantly getting dirt into the controllers. Actually, I can even feel it on this one. I'm not sure how well it's going to show, or you can hear it, but A and B are incredibly gummed up, especially A. You can almost even see it here a little bit, if we can see. It's super sticky. So my guess is somebody probably spilled pop or something in here. Hopefully it's not corroded on the inside. But I'm going to guess with just a simple clean, every single one of these controllers can get fixed with just cleaning the board, maybe cleaning the buttons, and go from there. It does look like they do have one cable here. It looks like it's been split. It doesn't look like it's gone through any of the wires. The rest of these contacts all look good. I don't see what looks to be any corrosion or anything in these contacts. Everything just needs, obviously, a good clean. Again, the listing said that every one of these did not work. So I want to start out and test these out and see if we can get a good handle on what's wrong with each of these controllers, and then start disassembling them, cleaning them, and fixing whatever else needs to be done to get these in working shape. And because I have this one, and we do know the buttons are all sticky, let's go ahead and start with this one and see if we can see what's wrong. So before we test the broken controller, I just want to go ahead and confirm with a known working controller that everything is still working properly. And I just want to test out all the buttons. So up and down, obviously we'll select the different game mode. Select also does that as well. Again, start, we'll select it. And then again from here too, select up and down. Let's go and turn the volume down. And then obviously we can confirm left and right, run and jump. Everything is working like we'd expect. So let's go ahead and turn that off. Put that controller out of the way for now. And we'll start with our first bad controller. This is also the one that has the tear in the cable. So this will take care of both of those with one controller. So let's go ahead and plug it in. Powered on. And up and down works. Select does not work. And start. Start does work. It's a little bit finicky, but let's do it again here. There it goes. All right. So we can see left and right work. A does work. And B works as well. So it actually looks like everything does work. I don't remember, did the select button work? Yep, everything works. It's just super dirty on the inside. So this one does look like it works. Again, just dirty, just needs a clean, not a big deal. So I'm gonna go ahead and label this one and we'll grab the next controller. So here we have number 2. Everything looks okay on this one. Again, it looks like maybe the front's a bit dirty. This one, all the buttons do feel good. So let's go ahead and plug this one in and test it out. All right, so select does not work on this one. Start does. A works and B works. But as we saw, select does not. So I'm going to guess that select is just dirty. So we'll mark that down and go to controller number 3. So for controller number 3, just like number 2, it looks good. Buttons are not sticky. Again, maybe some cleaning on the controller. Actually, it looks like... Okay, so start works as well. Same thing. It works occasionally. It definitely takes pressure to actually register, but it's good. A is good. Just a bit of a touchy start button on this one. So let's put that away and go to number 4. And here we have number 4. This one, super scratched up. It looks like it, interestingly enough, it looks like it's missing, so it should have 6 screws on the back and it's missing 3. It has the middle 2 and that one, but it's missing those. So obviously at some point somebody's taken this one apart, which is not surprising because it looks like nothing works on this one. So I wonder if this even has the membranes in here, because it looks like definitely, absolutely nothing works on this controller. So we may not be able to fix this one, but we'll see once we open it up. So let's mark that down and move on to number 5. And here we are with number 5. We have no up and down, and no select, and no start, or A and B. So this one also has no functionality, so we'll see what's wrong with this one. It does have all the screws, so it doesn't look like maybe somebody's been into it, but we'll open this up and see what's going on with this one as well. And for the last one, we have number 6. This one, again, scratched up, doesn't feel bad. Up works. You probably can't hear it. I can hear a beep going up. Oh, down does work too. It's just a little bit touchy. Same for select. Start does also work, but again, super sensitive. Same for B. Oh gosh, and left. Oh, it goes. It looks like they do all work, but they all require a lot of pressure. So this is gonna hopefully just need a cleaning on the pads. Let's mark that down, go back to the bench and start taking a look at these controllers. So here we are back at the bench. Again, this is number 1. So this controller does work. However, the start button does require a lot of pressure to register, and the buttons, again, are all super sticky and kind of gross. So let's start with this one and take it apart. Let's go ahead and zoom in here a little bit. So if you've never taken apart an NES controller before, they are super easy to work on. There's going to be 6 screws on the back. Obviously you can see them all here. All Phillips screws. They all come out pretty easy. Then once you've got them all out, the back of the case just comes off. I'm going to go ahead and push them out here as well, just to make sure I do not lose them. Sometimes they get stuck in the back of the shell. Take that out of the way. And here we have our PCB. So pay close attention to this part. We want to make sure that when we go to put this back together, we run this wire in the same way that it was run before. This just provides a little bit of strain relief. So if you pull on the controller, you're not going to pull the wire directly out of the board. So just make sure you kind of see here how this works. You'll kind of see when you go to put it back together that it'll follow that same general pattern, because the cord over the last 40 years or whatever is going to still kind of be stuck in that way. But in the meantime, we can go ahead and just carefully remove it. And then the pins for the cable are labeled if they do happen to come desoldered, but they are soldered on the back side, so they won't come out just lifting it up. But we can go ahead and just lift up and pull the PCB off. It's So it actually does look pretty clean. Let's get some stuff out of the way here. So here we have our membranes. And so the buttons on the front push on these membranes, and these have a conductive coating on them. And those are what will actually bridge these carbon tracks on here to let the system know that the button's pressed. So it could simply be these pads being dirty and or these being dirty here as well. So we have our D-pad membrane, and then this is our start and select membrane. Now the difference with start and select, which you can actually, it's probably not going to show well, this one is super sticky. The start and select membrane does not actually have a physical button that gets pushed into it, but the D-pad and then the A and B buttons do as well. And I can see, and you can probably see it here as well, this is super, super sticky. Oh man. You can see a lot of residue on there. And then even the residue all over these buttons. So these buttons are going to need to be cleaned in some nice, oh man, oof. Some nice warm soapy water. Let's just kind of move those out of the way for the moment. Let's turn our attention to our PCB. Again, on a quick glance, it looks okay. So the NES functions a little bit differently with how it reads the button presses on the controller. It actually uses this shift register here. Basically, it asks the controller what one of the button presses is, and then it asks what the next one is, and the next one is, and the next one is, and that proceeds to feed it all back through the register back to the system. So as long as it knows that these buttons are properly pressed and that this is working, which I doubt, usually these don't fail, we should be good to go. So I'm going to go ahead and grab a Q-tip and some isopropyl alcohol. We don't want to put a lot of pressure trying to clean these tracks. They are a little bit more fragile than straight copper traces. So just some gentle cleaning over these just to make sure that any dust, debris, or residual pop, I guess, gets cleaned off of here. Because if we do it too much, we can start to see here, there's a little bit of that carbon residue on the Q-tip. So I don't want to go too hard and risk accidentally rubbing that off. And it does look like, I can't tell, there is some shiny up here. I'm not sure how well it'll show in the video. It's possible this is some residual pop that has spilled in here. So let's just see if we can clean that a little bit. Oh yeah, we can see it coming off on the Q-tip now. I don't think that's factory flux, but I mean it could be because it's also over here too, but we'll go ahead and just clean it off just to make sure. Get the whole board nice and clean, or cleaner, at least than it was. And I think we are in good shape now. So I don't think it's worth recording, but I'm gonna go get a warm bucket of soapy water and take these membranes and buttons and the case and give these a good clean with the toothbrush. Again, being careful, you can over scrub these. Again, taking off the conductive tracing on there and kind of ruin these. So I'm gonna be careful with these, but I'm still gonna clean them up, clean all the dust, clean the sticky stuff off of here. And I will be right back, hopefully with this all nice and clean and ready to put back together. So after letting everything sit in some warm soapy water for about a half hour and scrubbing it down with the toothbrush, I think everything came out pretty clean. So I'm going to, real quick, just take a little bit of IPA, just for good measure, and clean the bottom of the contacts on these membranes. So just put a little bit of IPA on a Q-tip. And again, we don't need much, but I just want to go through and just make sure, just to get these cleaned up. And that's it. So now we can go ahead and reassemble. And again, like I mentioned before, just make sure that we follow the same path to utilize the strain relief molded into the controller. And I'm confident I'm going to go ahead and just screw it all back together because I'm confident that it will work after cleaning all that up. Go ahead and put in the 6 screws. We can already see how much better it feels. Obviously we don't have that sticky residue still in here, but everything feels way better. So let's go ahead and go back to the NES, plug this in, and see if that took care of our problem. So let's go ahead and plug in this controller. Again, this is the one that we just cleaned. It does still have the broken outer casing. Again, it's hard to see on here. That is still there. I'm not going to worry about that for now. If I wanted to take care of it, I would desolder the pins from the board and run some heat shrink. I'm not going to worry about that right now just because it is on the outer shell and it's not affecting any of the wires inside. But let's go ahead and plug this in, at least, and see if cleaning that board took care of our problem. You can see up, down, works great. Same thing, select, works perfect. Start. And run and jump. Everything now is working, except for my ability to play the game. Everything is working perfect on this one. So I'm going to call this one fixed. Again, there is that tear in the case. I'm not worried about that right now. But this one is fully working. So I think the next one I want to look at is the one that's missing 3 of the screws. That looks like they might have opened it up at some point. So let's grab that one, head back to the bench, and see what's wrong with that one. So we are going a little bit out of order, but I do want to jump straight to number 4, which is the one that was missing those screws, because it looks like, I'm going to guess they had it opened at one point, or at least tried. It looks like these screws might be chewed up pretty bad. But let's see if we can get it open and see what's going on inside. Oh, they all did come out. What has happened in this one? This one has seen better days. Oh man. Let's go ahead and set this off to the side. So we have a broken post here that corresponds to this guy upside down here. That's fine. We have a cracked membrane. We can see that on here. So that obviously is not going to be fixable. We have some dirty membranes, some cracked stuff there. That one's got some sticky. This one, we can really see, hopefully this shows up on video. In the previous controller, again, I mentioned we can clean these pads, but we do want to be careful that we don't over clean them, just to make sure that we don't remove too much of the carbon track on there. And it looks like, again, if I can focus, it looks like a lot of that has already been overly rubbed off. We can see, man, we can also see that it looks like, if I can show it from this angle, there's a massive blob of solder up here. This one has definitely seen better days. Let's just grab the multimeter just to see how sensitive these traces are on this board. So if I put it in continuity mode here, and we just test some of these traces. So for example, this one and this one here should be grounded. We don't have continuity there. Let's go ahead and clean one of these pads, or a couple of these pads, with some IPA gently, just to see. There's really not much left on these pads. So I'm getting a pretty high ohm reading, if anything at all. I'm at 150 ohms right now between these two pads. I'm at open line. I could do the same thing here between these two. You hear the beep there, it's at 30 ohms. But if I go back, farther back, I have nothing. Open line. And I can also tell here, which is pretty easy to see, apparently somebody has been in here, tried to work on this, which is going to make this one completely not functional. So for now, I'm going to sit this off to the side, and I want to grab the other controller that also had no buttons working and see what kind of state that's in. So I'll put this one back together, and I will be right back.
Hang on a second.
Hey, voiceover Steven, what's up?
Before you do that, let me jump in here real quick and announce some exciting news.
Be my guest. Go ahead.
We have a new sponsor for this channel, PCBWay. When PCBWay reached out to me for a sponsorship, I wanted to make sure that their product was good and that their quality was something that I would be willing to support. So I quickly did some research on how to make a custom PCB and went ahead and drafted up a PCB with a few components. Once that was done, I made an order of my own using my own money to my own address to see what kind of quality they represented. I ordered it on Tuesday, it shipped on Thursday, and it arrived to my doorstep the very next day. That's a 3-day turnaround from when I initially made the order. That's unbelievable. The shipment arrived very well packaged, sealed in a moisture-proof bag and wrapped in padding. The quality of the PCB was amazing. It was printed exactly to my specifications, complete with labeling, silk screening, drill holes, vias, and traces. I wired one of them up with some of the components I had, and it worked perfectly. For the price that I paid for 10 PCBs shipped to my door, I was blown away. So I am absolutely excited to partner with PCB and tell you more about their products. So thanks again, PCBWay, for sponsoring this video. Now, back to you and your continued repair of more NES controllers.
All right, thanks voiceover Steven, and thanks PCBWay for sponsoring this video. Now we'll go ahead and close this one up and grab that other controller and see what's going on. All right, so this one is number 5. This is the other one that had zero functionality at all. I'm taking a quick look at it. At least from the back, this one looks a lot better. I can see that this isn't all ripped up. The cable's still good. I realized as I was closing the other one up, it also had the broken wire sort of support pieces here. That was gone. Everything, at least on the back of this one, looks good. So let's go ahead and remove the wire and pull the board out. At a quick glance, it looks okay. So there must have been factory flex on that first board we looked at, because I do see similar shiny flex here. But the carbon pads look a lot better on this one. I do want to see, because this one does look a lot better, I do want to see what our resistance rating is on this one. Let's move this actually in screen so we can see this a little bit better this time. So if I just grab 2 connecting pads here, these are the ground side of these 2 pins. I can see that I do have an easy ohm rating of about 120 ohms on this one. I can do the same over here. 100 ohms. The same for down here. 120 ohms. So I'm able to easily get a reading off of these pads. So that's a good sign. So let's go ahead and do the same thing on this one that I did on the first one. We'll quickly clean up these pads. Again, gently, without trying to remove much of the carbon track. I do see what looks like maybe some corrosion between those pins. So let's go ahead and clean that up too. I think this board is in good shape. So just like the first one, I'm going to take these pieces upstairs, soak them in some warm soapy water, clean them off, bring them back down, and see if this one works. So after disassembling and completely cleaning this controller, let's test it out and see if this one's been fixed as well. We should have movement. Okay, nothing. Absolutely nothing. And again, I verified I had continuity on the carbon tracks on the board, so this should be working, especially after getting it all cleaned up. And it's not. So let's go ahead and take this one back to the bench, take it back apart, and see if we can figure out what else might be wrong with this controller. So again, everything has been cleaned. I went ahead and cleaned up all the pads, all the buttons, everything else. We should be good to go. Let's grab the multimeter here. And let's go ahead and test for continuity between. So again, we have 5 pins, yellow, brown, red, orange, and white. Sometimes the white seems to be different colors. I've seen this green and some other colors before. But let's test those with the pins on the connector itself. So every one of the pins has continuity from the board to the connector itself. And I've also verified that I have readings on all of these pads. So what I believe at this point is the problem is that it is likely that this shift register right here has gone bad. Well, it's not a common problem as far as I'm aware, but it does happen that these can go bad. And once this goes bad, you can have all sorts of different issues, phantom presses of buttons, even buttons, or even completely non-functional controllers, which seems to be what this one's doing. So I'm going to go ahead and also sit this one off to the side. And it might be that we try to take that shift register from the controller that was missing pins and everything was corroded and broken on it. We might see if we can replace this with that one and see if we can get this one working using that different shift register. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and sit this one off to the side. And the other 3 controllers that we have yet to look at, all those seem like they all worked. They just had issues with some of the buttons not quite working right. So we know that the shift register works, everything else should be fine. So I think I'm just going to take those, clean all those off camera, and come back and see if we can verify that those are working. And if they are, we'll turn our attention back to this one and see if we can get this working. So I've gone ahead and disassembled and completely cleaned those other 3 controllers. So let's just test those out and make sure that those are working. This one worked, except it had a touchy start button. Let's just make sure this one's working. Or still working, anyway. Looks like the start button works nice and well now on this one. Everything seems good as well. So, okay. First one is good. So this one's select button did not work. Let's see if that one got resolved. This one looks good as well. Let's just go ahead and test the rest of the buttons and make sure. And this one looks like it's good. So let's check out the last of those 3 controllers. So this one said they all worked, but the buttons needed a little bit extra pressure to work. So let's see if that got resolved by cleaning. So this one looks like it is much better than it was. Select, up, down, left and right, A and B. Of course I can't play well, but this one seems to be working also. So that leaves us with 4 controllers that seem like they are fixed. And then 2 controllers, one that doesn't do anything. Actually, both that don't do anything, but one that seems completely corroded and broken with cables ripped out of it. So let's take both of those to the bench, swap out that shift register chip from the bad board to the, what looks to be a good board, and see if we can also get that controller working. So I have gone ahead and disassembled both the obviously broken controller with the cables and stuff ripped out, and the controller that looks good but is non-functional. And we're going to see if we can swap out this shift register and put it over here. Again, speculating that this one has broken. These are cheap to buy. I think I can buy like a 5-pack on Amazon for maybe 10 bucks, probably even cheaper on eBay or AliExpress. But because I have one of these that I don't think is going to work in the end anyway, I'm going to go ahead and swap this one out, see if I can put it into here. Again, if I had a desoldering iron, that would make this a lot easier, which I do not. But hopefully, if I can just flood it with some nice leaded solder, that it should hopefully come out relatively simply. So let's just give it some extra flex. And I'm going to turn on my fume extractor and see if we can get this out. And there we are. And there is the bad one removed as well. So now, while the board is hot, I need to get rid of a lot of the burned off flux here. And then come in with my desoldering braid and see if we can get all of this leftover solder out of all these holes. Zoom in a little bit closer here so we can see what's going on. Since the board is now cooling, let's get rid of all of this burned off flex. There we go. I think that looks pretty good. So now, let's clean off the bottom side too while we're at it. So there is going to be a marking on the back of the board. We can see a little notch here, and we can also see a tiny notch in the register as well. So as long as we get those two lined up beside each other, be very careful we don't bend any pins while trying to install this. There we go. So we can see that that's sitting there nice and flush. Go ahead and use a bit more flex and solder this in place. And see if this fixes our problem. And there we go, all soldered back into place. And again, while the flux is warm, clean up as much of it as we can. So let's go ahead and put this back together, hook it up to the Nintendo, and see if that chip swap was all we needed to do to fix this controller. So here we go, time to test the last controller of the lot. Again, as a reminder, before this controller did nothing, even after cleaning up all the pads, buttons, and so forth. And again, for this controller, we took the shift register off of this broken controller. This board is pretty much for parts as it is at this point anyway. So I went ahead and took the shift register off of here and put it on this controller. So let's test it out and see if that took care of this problem. And again, before we had no input at all before on this one. And yes, look at that. It works. Looks like it works perfect. Up and down, select, start, and left and right, A and B as well. Beautiful. This one looks like this is working perfect now after changing out that shift register. I do think this video is getting long enough. I don't think I'm going to try to fix the Genesis controllers as part of this video. I think we'll make a part 2 and take a look at those at another time. And so with that, I think it is a good time to wrap up this video and see where we ended up. Well, I think that's going to about do it for this video. This video has gone on long enough. I don't think I want to work on the Genesis controllers in this video. So we're just going to make this part 1 of a 2-part series, where this one we just looked at the NES controllers and we'll look at the Genesis ones in part 2. But in the end, out of the 6 controllers we started with, we got 5 out of the 6 working when it was all said and done. 4 of them just had to be completely cleaned, both the pads on the membranes as well as the tracks on the board itself, and that made the controllers work as good as new. The other one, which I believe was this one, I've already kind of lost track after kind of mixing them around, also needed to have its shift register replaced. Those do occasionally go bad. In this case, we saw that this one went bad. Sometimes they can present in a different way. Sometimes you'll get weird button inputs. Other times, like in this one, you get no response at all. But simply replacing this one with the one from the beat up controller took care of it, and this thing works perfectly as well. So unfortunately, I couldn't get all 6 fixed. However, that 6th one I do have sitting here. I did take it apart, completely clean it. I managed to get the board all nice and clean. I got the old cables desoldered, and I think it's in a good place where I could fix it. I do need to buy another one of those 4021 shift registers. Obviously, we put that in the other controller. And also the carbon tracks on this board have been completely worn down. There are some things out there like conductive paint that you can put on those and sort of renew the response on the button pads. I don't have any of that, and I don't have that 401 shift register right now. So I just went ahead and cleaned everything up, cut the broken end off this connector just so I have it ready. And maybe I'll revisit this down the road and see if we can get this one working and end up having 6 out of 6 fully working when it's all said and done. Now, in a lot of cases, it doesn't make sense to go through that much of an effort to clean and refurbish these controllers. Again, I bought these from a reseller that probably ran some sort of business where these got traded in. And sometimes it's not worth it to take them apart, clean them, refurbish them, when you can buy working ones super cheap on eBay. eBay. And you can also buy aftermarket brand new ones for even cheaper. Obviously, they're not as good a quality, but for businesses where their bottom line is their main priority, it doesn't always make sense for them to do that. But for those of us that might have an old console in a closet or an attic or something that we want to get it working, it is completely worth it to take it apart and refurbish it ourselves. The process is really easy, probably doesn't take more than 10 minutes to a half hour, depending on how much cleaning you need to do. And in the end, you can get this working just like brand new with very little effort. And it helps to save another one of these controllers from ending up in a landfill. So for me, it doesn't make a lot of sense to have 5 more controllers that I don't need. I already have 2 with my main NES system. However, just off screen, I have 5 more NESs that I fixed in a previous video. So I might be able to do something by combining these controllers with those systems. So we'll have to see if I can come up with a fun idea for a video down the road where we can do just that. So with that, thanks again for watching, and a huge thank you to PCBWay for sponsoring this video. Stay tuned, and hopefully we'll have a part 2 soon where I tackle fixing these 6 Sega Genesis controllers. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.